There is a trait, subtle, socially acceptable, even praised, that has quietly destroyed more men than war, betrayal, or failure ever could. It is not laziness. It is not ignorance. It is not even fear. The most dangerous trait a man can have, Machiavelli warned us, is the desperate need to be liked. Niccolò Machiavelli, one of the most misunderstood political thinkers in history, didn't write The Prince as a moral guideline. He wrote it as a cold manual of reality. He understood something most people still refuse to admit, that power, respect, and influence are not built on approval. In fact, the man who depends on being liked will always live under the rule of those whose approval he chases. That man is not leading. He is being led. This is the fatal trap. In seeking to be liked, you make yourself manipulable. You reshape your words, your tone, your presence to fit into a mold that others created for their own comfort, not your growth. You become a performer, constantly adjusting your mask depending on who's watching. But as Machiavelli understood, the world doesn't reward masks, it rewards strength. The man who tries to please everyone earns no real loyalty. He is admired by none, respected by few, and used by many. Machiavelli wrote, "It is better to be feared than loved if you cannot be both." He wasn't advocating cruelty. He was advocating clarity. Fear, in his context, wasn't about intimidation. It was about consequence. A man who is respected, even feared, establishes boundaries. He cannot be pushed around, bribed, or emotionally manipulated. But a man who only seeks to be liked invites exploitation. His love is conditional, easily revoked. His voice is soft, his stance uncertain, and his presence forgettable. We see this today everywhere, from corporate boardrooms to personal relationships, men who struggle to say no, who hesitate to speak with conviction, who over-apologize, over-explain, and overextend themselves, not because they are kind, but because they are afraid. Afraid of discomfort, afraid of rejection, afraid of being seen as too much. But kindness rooted in fear is not virtue, it's submission. And society has trained men into this submission by shaming assertiveness, demonizing ambition, and glorifying obedience. It starts early. Boys are told to be polite, to sit still, to not speak unless spoken to be good, to be nice. But what they're not told is that the world does not belong to the nice, it belongs to the bold. And so these boys grow up into men who confuse obedience with maturity, silence with wisdom, and weakness with virtue. They walk through life quietly, hoping their goodness will be rewarded, only to find themselves overlooked, underappreciated, and replaceable. This is exactly what Machiavelli tried to warn us about. That leadership, self-mastery, and influence are not gained by seeking to please, but by becoming someone who does not need to. The moment you are no longer reliant on approval, you become dangerous in the best way. You speak freely, you act decisively, you stand firm in your values. You become someone whose respect is earned, not bought with praise. History is filled with men who understood this. Men like Alexander the Great, who led with authority, not softness. Like Malcolm X, who refused to dilute his message for comfort. Like Steve Jobs, who demanded excellence rather than likability. These men were not beloved by all. Many were polarizing, but all were respected. Because they didn't chase applause, they built legacies. Even in myth and storytelling, we see this archetype repeated: the warrior, the rebel, the lone king. Odysseus, who outwitted gods and men alike, was not loved for his charm but for his cunning and resolve. Achilles was not respected because he played nice, but because he walked in brutal honesty. Real power has never belonged to the agreeable, it belongs to the unapologetic. This isn't to say that you should aim to be hated. Machiavelli himself said it is ideal to be both loved and feared. But if forced to choose, choose fear. Why? Because fear sustains power. Love, when based on performance and people-pleasing, fades the moment you stop giving. Fear, rooted in earned respect and strong boundaries, endures. You can see the effects of the approval addiction in everyday life. Watch how men censor themselves in meetings, softening their language just to be liked. Look at how men tiptoe around the truth in relationships, fearing they'll seem too harsh. They mistake passivity for peace, and in doing so, they lose their edge. The world is full of agreeable men with no power. Men who believe that being harmless is a virtue, when in reality it's a symptom of their fear. One of the most dangerous things about needing to be liked is that it makes you predictable. You'll always bend where you're expected to. You'll always say the right thing to avoid tension. You'll always trade truth for comfort. But power is built on unpredictability. People don't follow the man who blends in, they follow the man who stands out, who speaks what others fear to say, who walks away when others cling. You must understand this. Power is not given to those who follow the rules. It is given to those who know when to break them. It is given to the ones who create their own rules and live by them. But to live by your own code, you must be willing to endure being misunderstood, criticized, even disliked. That is the cost of greatness. That is the weight of real power. Because here's the truth most won't tell you. People respect the man they cannot manipulate. They may not always like him, but they remember him. They may not always praise him, but they watch him. And when the storm hits, when the pressure mounts, they look to him, not the agreeable man, for direction. Because when things fall apart, people don't need someone who's liked. They need someone who is unshakable. The need to be liked is not just a weakness, it is a leash. And as long as you wear it, someone else is holding the other end. Your boss, your partner, your friends, society, culture. Anyone who knows that you crave approval can steer your life without resistance. And the scariest part is, they often do it without even realizing it. But when you sever that leash, when you no longer make choices based on applause, you begin to live for something more, your purpose, your principle, your power. You stop apologizing for existing. You stop seeking validation from people who don't even know who they are. You stop measuring your worth by how many people smile when you speak. You begin to speak the truth, not for effect, not for reaction, but because it's your truth. You begin to walk into rooms with clarity, not performance. You begin to build not popularity, but legacy. That is what Machiavelli was really warning us about. That the approval-seeking man, though often praised in life, dies with nothing to show for it. No real respect, no power, no truth. Just a lifetime of compromise and a deathbed full of regrets. Do not aim to be liked. Aim to be aligned with your values, your voice, and your vision. The world will try to punish you for it, but the right people will rise to meet you, and the wrong ones will fall away on their own. The moment you stop needing to be liked is the moment your life begins to change. But how do you do it? How do you strip away years of programming, cultural conditioning, and subconscious behavior that has trained you to value likability above truth? The answer begins with awareness and brutal honesty. You have to see it first. You have to witness yourself in real time, adjusting your tone to soften impact, holding back opinions to avoid conflict, and choosing silence to stay agreeable. Not because you're polite, but because deep down, you're afraid. Afraid that truth will cost you love, that boundaries will make you alone, that strength will make you a threat. But ask yourself, what have you gained by being likable? What have you built by tiptoeing around people's feelings? What has that over-accommodation bought you, other than resentment, self-abandonment, and a reputation for being someone who can be pushed? Machiavelli would say this: that every act of self-betrayal for the sake of approval is an act of weakness, because you're sacrificing the one thing that makes you powerful, your agency. If you want to reclaim that power, you must begin with detachment. Not emotional numbness, but detachment from needing to be seen a certain way. You must become indifferent to their applause and their disapproval. That's what true inner freedom is. You say what needs to be said. You act according to your vision. And if they don't like it, so be it. You are not here to make people feel comfortable. You are here to live a life aligned with your principles. Start small. When someone asks you for something you don't want to give, say no without explaining. When you're asked for your opinion, give it without softening it into social sugar. When you walk into a room, let your posture say, "I am not here to impress. I am here to exist fully." You'll feel resistance. That's the echo of the old self dying, and others will feel it too. People who once leaned on your compliance will be unsettled. Friends will say you've changed. Partners may pull away. Colleagues may bristle at your clarity. Why? Because they were never relating to you. They were relating to your mask. And now that it's gone, they don't know what to do with the real you. Let them go. Your value is not in being agreeable. It's in being true. The shift from approval-seeking to sovereignty is one of the hardest transitions a man can make, because it requires a kind of psychological death. The death of the nice guy, the death of the appeaser, the death of the boy who just wanted to be liked. But in that death, something far more powerful is born. The man who is feared, not because he is cruel, but because he cannot be controlled. And Machiavelli understood this better than anyone. His work wasn't about violence, it was about understanding power. He knew that when a man no longer fears rejection, he becomes invincible, because rejection has no power over someone who stands on principle, not popularity. You must make peace with being misunderstood. You must learn to walk away from comfort. You must develop the ability to be alone without losing yourself, because solitude is the crucible of strength. And in that space you learn who you are, not who you've been performing to be. From there, you begin to rebuild. You replace people-pleasing with presence. You replace apologizing with accountability. You replace small talk with bold truth. You stop filtering your thoughts for approval and start crafting your actions for results. And something else happens too. People begin to notice. They listen differently when you speak. They respond differently to your silence. They look at you not as a source of comfort, but as a source of gravity. Because now, you're not here to be liked. You're here to be clear, grounded, effective, respected. Respect becomes your new baseline, not approval. Respect isn't about being dominant or loud. It's about consistency. It's about having standards. It's about moving through the world without chasing validation. When you carry that energy, people begin to orbit you differently. You no longer chase, you attract. Not everyone, but the right ones. You also stop wasting energy. The man addicted to likability leaks power in every room he enters. He's constantly scanning, adjusting, pleasing, monitoring how he's being perceived. But the man who walks in centered, who knows who he is, has no such leaks. He is a presence, not a performance. This is what Machiavelli meant by the appearance of virtue. He advised rulers to appear virtuous when necessary, but never to let appearances override outcomes, because appearances are just that, appearances. And men who chase the image of goodness often forfeit real strength. But the man who is centered in himself, he doesn't need to appear, he simply is. You must ask yourself, are you living by your own code or someone else's comfort? When you stop living for likability, you gain time. You gain clarity. You gain power. You begin to filter out manipulation, guilt tactics, flattery, false praise. You begin to see the difference between being admired and being used. In relationships, this is especially powerful. The approval-seeking man is always in a subordinate position. He seeks validation from his partner, hoping to earn love through performance. But love built on performance is fragile. It bends and breaks. Real connection begins when you stop needing to be accepted and start requiring to be respected. The truth is, not everyone is meant to like you. Not everyone should. In fact, if everyone does, you're probably hiding something. The most honest men in history were also the most controversial. Socrates was sentenced to death. Galileo was imprisoned. Jesus was crucified. Martin Luther King was assassinated. Not because they were evil, but because they refused to be liked at the cost of truth. This is the ultimate lesson of Machiavelli's insight. Likability is a political tool, not a personal philosophy. Use it strategically, but never let it be the compass that guides your life. Because once it is, you've handed over your map to someone else. Let the world misunderstand you. Let people talk. Let others feel uncomfortable when you speak with clarity and walk with certainty. It is not your job to make yourself smaller to fit inside their expectations. Your job is to become the man you were born to be. The man who doesn't fold when pressure comes. The man who leads even when it's unpopular. The man who says, "This is who I am and I won't apologize for it." Because at the end of your life, no one will remember how many people liked you. They will remember if you stood for something, if you lived by your own code, if you were a man of gravity, or just another echo in the crowd. And if you live for their applause, you'll die with their silence. But if you live for your principles, you'll walk alone, maybe, but you'll walk in truth. You'll walk in power. You'll walk with your head high. And that is the only way to walk.